The Last of Us Part 2 is currently undergoing its controversial TV show adaptation. I figured now would be a good time to do my own little series of a video game which I fell in love with from the first moment I played Joel. I have a few caveats first. I came up with 3 versions for Part 2. Each one has its own stipulations. For version 1, I will be using the following to tell the story that I have written. Revenge would be the theme. Joel, Ellie, and Abby will be the main characters. All major events will still happen in some way or other. Basically, a retelling of the story we already have. Please note that I am giving an overall plot here, and there would be a lot more nuance once fleshed out in the final product. Before I jump right into this, spoiler warning, I know many who have played the game were very upset with Joel's death, and I totally understand and am right there with you. However, as a storyteller, I cannot see many ways to continue a story involving Ellie and Joel without killing him or Ellie. With that said, this will be the only version which I follow the major events of Part 2 and hope you can stick around to see if I can change your mind about the death of our favorite character. Due to the fact that I have the source material to work from on this one and will be tweaking it rather than writing it from scratch, this one turned out pretty long. In fact, the original draft I wrote was over 20 pages to sum up the story. I was able to slim it down to a meager 16 pages. So yeah, this may be a bit long. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my version of The Last of Us Part 2, version 1. During the opening credits, we get the faint sound of Joel's southern drawl talking about what it means to save and care for someone and how that makes your heart beat. A guitar plays over his voice as the camera pans over Jackson while the sun begins to set behind the mountains in the distance. It's been 5 years. A few cuts on normal life in Jackson show the player how people are thriving here. Finally, we find ourselves at a home which sees Joel, Dina, Tommy, and Maria enjoying each other's company as they make dinner. Just as they set the table, the front door opens and Tommy quickly gets up to greet Ellie. They talk about her patrol with Jesse and how the infected are acting strangely and adapting to the winters. Before finishing the conversation, she turns a corner to see Joel sitting at the table and her mood turns sour. We get some dialogue here that references Tommy inviting Ellie, but not telling her that Joel would be here. Some talk about how they haven't had a family dinner in a long time. Things are tense until someone breaks the ice with Joel. After some lighthearted talk and enjoying each other's company, Tommy brings up the infected and how Ellie told him they were adapting to the winters. They talk about the winters and how they are getting worse each year and they need to figure out a way to deal with the infected for good before winter and the infected cause serious problems for Jackson. Ellie's mood turns sour once again at the mention of getting rid of the infected for good, and she and Joel begin to argue until Ellie finally gets up and walks out. The next day we find Joel on his porch playing his guitar as Tommy approaches. Before Tommy can say anything, Joel guesses he's here because Ellie has gone missing again. They talk about how no one wants to go out and find her due to this becoming a reoccurring thing, and the last time this happened, someone got hurt. The player now controls Joel and walks through town with Tommy. This gives the player the chance to see how Joel is respected here and how close the community is. Tommy and Joel get on their horses and set out to find Ellie. They talk about her behavior for the last year and what's gotten into her. Joel confesses that she's figured out the truth. On her trail, snow begins to fall heavier and heavier as they approach a resort on the mountainside. An explosion goes off which causes an avalanche. Joel and Tommy have to outrun the avalanche and get split up as they take cover in nearby cabins. Joel makes his way to the destroyed resort. When infected begin coming out of the snow, a horde of them begin surrounding the resort. Joel thinks he's found Ellie's trail, but it turns out to be Abby. He saves her from a horde of infected and they begin to make their escape. Abby tells him she has friends in the area and they know a place to meet up if something like this were to happen. While taking Abby to her friends, Joel sees Tommy and calls out to him, but he doesn't seem to hear him. Once Joel gets Abby to her friends, he tells Abby and her friends to be safe, but he can't stay and has to go find his brother and his daughter. Having heard him use Tommy's name, Abby stops him from leaving. Joel wonders what is going on. Cut to 1 year ago. Dina and Ellie are on patrol. The player now controls Ellie. They have a casual conversation that turns into them talking about relationships. Here we see Ellie and Dina's natural connection and chemistry. We find out that Dina isn't happy in her relationship with Jesse and isn't sure why, as she tells Ellie that Jesse is a great guy. This leads to the two of them kissing for the first time and beginning a relationship. While on patrol, they run into a horde in an abandoned town town and get separated. A windstorm kicks up snow, and Ellie gets turned around. She ends up at the resort and notices someone has been living here. She stumbles upon Abby, and they nearly kill each other, but eventually lower their guard and realize that they are not a threat to each other. Abby convinces Ellie to stay the night due to the snowstorm getting worse. They bond, and Ellie finds out that Abby comes here every few months because it's the place her father met her mother. She tells Ellie she is an ex-Firefly, but is currently with a militia out of Seattle called the WLF. She's trying to leave due to hearing rumors of Fireflies popping back up, but hasn't found anything or anyone yet. Ellie suggests Abby come back to Jackson with her and that Jackson and the WLF could help each other out. Abby explains it wouldn't be wise if anyone on either side knew about the other due to how the WLF operate. They agree to meet every 2 months at the resort in secret. 8 hours in present time, Ellie wakes up and heads out of Jackson just as the sun is coming up over the mountains. At the resort, Ellie runs into Owen. They nearly kill each other before Abby explains she brought her friends. Abby explains they are leaving the WLF as they've gotten word the Fireflies are in California. Abby asks Ellie if she or anyone in town would want to join them in their cause. Ellie isn't sure, but Abby convinces her to take them into town. Before they can begin making their way into town, one of Abby's friends tells them they've found something. She leads them down into the basement of the resort, which is lined with natural rock walls. They find a crack and make their way through to find a grotto. Abby tells Ellie about her father and what he was doing to find a cure to the infected. She explains she never had her father's skills, but the WLF recently took in a scientist who she has convinced to join her and the Fireflies. We get a very conflicted Ellie in these moments due to her past with the Fireflies. One of Abby's friends' flashlights goes out and they use a lighter. The spark from it ignites and engulfs the ceiling in flames, which travels across the rock to a crack in the wall. They quickly realize it's a natural methane vein and run to escape. The resort blows up and they are thrown down the mountain in an avalanche. Ellie wakes up in the snow surrounded by infected. In her escape, she hears shots and heads towards a cabin they were coming from. Rushing into the cabin, she finds Abby standing with a gun over Joel's dead body. She is frozen with shock for a moment before her rage kicks in and she rushes Abby. She's able to tackle Abby and get a few hits in when Abby's friend pulls Ellie off her and pins her to the ground. Blinded by rage and shocked by Joel's death, everything around her becomes a blur. If the player listens closely, you can hear Abby tell them not to kill Ellie and they need to leave before the Horde finds them. Abby plans to lead the Horde away from Ellie and Jackson. They knock Ellie out. Several days later, Ellie is in her home when Tommy comes in. Tommy confronts her on not going to Joel's funeral. This is a very emotional scene as we see it from a brother and daughter's perspective. Ellie is hurt and conflicted over how to feel considering her and Joel were on bad terms. She doesn't know how to deal with losing him while Tommy is filled with hate and anger over it. He wants revenge and while talking takes note of some drawings on Ellie's desk that detail Abby and her friends as well as their WLF symbol. Tommy presses her for information about Abby, not letting on he saw the drawing. Ellie tells him she doesn't know where Abby is or how to find her. Tommy leaves pissed at Ellie. Dina consoles Ellie and convinces her to go to Joel's house to pick up some things. Ellie struggles to even enter his home. Once inside, Ellie goes through a whirlwind of emotions as she goes through his things. At some point, Dina calls out to Ellie to come downstairs. Maria sits them down and explains that Tommy has taken off for revenge and Ellie is the only one who knows where he went and what he's gotten himself into. Ellie swears she doesn't know where Abby is. Maria presses her about it until Ellie breaks and explains that her and Abby have known each other for a year. Dina and Maria are shocked. Ellie explains Abby isn't in Seattle as she went to join the Fireflies somewhere on the West Coast. Maria is pissed and explains she just caused Tommy to go on a suicide mission to Seattle, chasing someone who isn't even there. Maria puts this on Ellie and tells her she needs to fix it. Ellie goes after Tommy and Dina joins her. After a week, they reach Seattle and Dina asks how they are going to find Tommy in this mess. Ellie says they will follow the blood trail if he is anything like his brother. Dina asks more about Joel, but Ellie is reserved. They eventually come across a courthouse and rest for the night. Dina isn't feeling well the next morning and Ellie wonders if it's from her drinking from a puddle. Later that day, they come across a battle between the WLF and the Scars. Trying to sneak around the battle, they stumble upon a horde of infected locked inside a building. Through a large set piece, they end up letting the infected out. All hell breaks loose as the infected overrun the battlefield. Ellie and Dina are driven through the battlefield and several buildings until they are cornered by infected. Ellie protects Dina by taking a bite. Before they are killed, the floor collapses and they are dropped into a river flooding the city. They wash up west of the city and find a movie theater to hold up in. Dina is overwhelmed and throws up. Ellie helps to calm her, and when she catches her breath, she suggests cutting off Ellie's arm to save her life. Ellie finally tells her she can't be infected. This leads to a big back and forth, and Dina telling Ellie she is pregnant. They talk about how they weren't sure the process they did with Jesse would even work, but Dina confirms it did work. Ellie tells Dina to stay at the theater, and if she doesn't return in 24 hours, Dina needs to head home without her. Ellie comes across a trail of bodies that were taken out by a sniper. She investigates nearby places that would make for a good sniper's nest and finds 2 bodies that look like they had been tortured. They are both Abby's friends. Ellie is shocked as she thought Abby wasn't returning to Seattle. She is about to leave with no clues as to where Tommy went from here when one of them comes back to life. Tommy must have thought he killed both of them, but left one alive and blinded. Ellie convinces them she is an ally and gets information Tommy headed to a nearby TV station. Ellie kills them in cold blood and feels sick from it. We get a flashback to Ellie and Joel walking in the woods, talking about the difference between killing in cold blood and defending yourself or someone you care about. This conversation cuts deep into Joel with the questions Ellie asks, not realizing it's bringing up painful past memories for him. Joel brings her to a museum for her birthday. They begin to explore and have a good time until they come across some Firefly graffiti. Back in the present, Ellie makes her way to the TV station. Ellie is able to get into the station by causing a Scar and WLF fight a few blocks away. She finds one of Abby's friends and begins torturing her for information. They tell Ellie that Abby was last seen with one of the last friends remaining alive at the hospital. Ellie asks about the Fireflies, to which the friend says it was all a lie. The Fireflies are dead and gone. Enraged, Ellie kills them in cold blood and throws up from it. In another flashback, we resume the museum birthday gift, where Joel tells her to drop the whole Firefly stuff. They go to the space exhibit. Afterward, they run into more Firefly graffiti, and Ellie presses Joel about it. She asks if it's okay what the Fireflies did, if they are justified in killing people to save the world. Joel becomes angry about it, and they argue until Ellie runs off. Joel finds her and explains that when you do enough wrong, it changes you. You become numb to it and can no longer see a line not to cross. It's a dangerous slope that once you go down, there is no turning back. You lose your soul to darkness, and there is very little light left in this world that can bring it back. This is a reference to why Joel lied and saved Ellie's life. She is his light and saved his soul. Back in present, the WLF come back from the battle and flood the TV station. There's a bit of chaos as they deal with injured. Ellie can use this to her advantage to escape. No matter what, Ellie is still noticed in her escape, and the WLF begin to chase her through the city. She ends up leading them into a Scar camp, and another battle breaks out. Ellie can find a horde nearby to unleash to her aid in her escape. Once at the hospital, this would be a big set piece with many different ways to tackle. You can cause all kinds of chaos with injured WLF or infected hordes in order to sneak in. If the player pays attention, you will overhear conversations that the WLF are in the middle of moving out of the hospital due to the growing infection in the basement of the building. You will also hear rumors of Abby being a traitor. Once Ellie finds the friend at the hospital, she goes to torture them, but they are interrupted by another WLF. Ellie has to kill the walk-in and gives chase to the friend throughout the hospital. Eventually they end up in the basement, and the infected begin to get out, causing all kinds of chaos. Ellie finally corners the friend and begins to beat them with a pipe in pure rage. With every swing of the pipe, we get flashes of Abby killing Joel, of Ellie killing Abby's friends. Eventually, Ellie stops long enough to get the information out of them and finds out Abby is at an aquatic museum with Owen and Mel. The friend, already infected, asks Ellie to make their death quick. Ellie turns back to rage and begins beating them with the pipe until they're dead. With all the chaos at the hospital, it's near impossible to escape. Eventually, Ellie is nearly killed by an infected when Jesse comes in to her rescue. They are able to hijack a truck and escape throughout the city. Back at the theater, Jesse learns that Dina is pregnant. Ellie and Dina argue about Ellie's mental state as she sees her covered in blood. Dina realizes Ellie is now on a mission of revenge rather than finding Tommy. Jesse is focused on finding Tommy and getting Dina out of the city. Frustrated by them, Ellie goes off to clean herself up. In the bathroom, she removes her shirt to see all the damage she's done to her body. She hears a grasp and turns to see Dina. They somewhat make up, but still have very different views on revenge and finding Tommy. Ellie suggests Dina and Jesse head home and she will find Tommy and bring him back. Jesse disagrees and says he will be more help to her and that Dina is safe in the theater. They then go to sleep. The next day, Jesse and Ellie head to the museum where they end up in the middle of a battle between a sniper and the WLF. They realize it's Tommy and he's shooting at Abby. They chase him down to a building on the pier. They burst through the back door to see Tommy, Abby, and another girl go over the pier into the water. Ellie goes to jump, but Jesse stops her, telling her the current is too strong for her as she isn't a good swimmer. Ellie rushes down to the beach to find Jesse pulling Tommy out of the water. They revive him when Ellie sees Abby and the girl escape on a boat. Ellie and Jesse argue, but Ellie wins out, leaving Jesse to deal with Tommy while she chases after Abby. She heads to the museum. At the aquatic museum, Ellie holds up Owen and Mel. When she points the gun at Mel, Owen jumps in the way and Ellie shoots him in the shoulder and tells him if he moves again, she'll shoot him in the head. Ellie is a cold-blooded killer at this point, completely numb. She notices Mel inching towards a knife on a nearby table and quickly shoots her in the head. Owen yells and goes to grab her when Ellie reacts and shoots him in the chest. In his last breath, he manages to tell Ellie that Mel is pregnant. Ellie has flashes of Dina as she looks at Mel, dead on the ground with her bullet in her. Ellie drops to her knees horrified at what she's done. Ellie's shock and horror freezes her. Here I would put the player in control, but have it very difficult to actually move Ellie, showing how crippling it could be when you cross a line and alter all of your values and morals as a person. When the player finally gets control of Ellie, they have to walk out of the museum. The player would not be able to run or even jog. Upon reaching the exit, Ellie walks out into the rain and takes a moment. Suddenly she hears the doors behind her slam open. Before she can turn, she is tackled to the ground by Abby. Abby begins to beat on Ellie until she's able to break free. From here, you get a boss fight, which brings you back into the museum. During the fight, Abby makes mention of Joel. She says something to the effect that Joel gave his life for Ellie, and she's gone and thrown it away. It's vague, but enough to give Ellie pause and begin to shift the perspective in the player. During the fight, several large aquariums are damaged. Abby is able to grab Ellie and press her up against one of the damaged tanks. The glass cracks grow as they are face to face. Suddenly, we hear Jesse yell for Abby to let Ellie go. Abby swings around and takes Ellie hostage with her back against the glass. Abby inches towards the door near the end of the tank when her foot hits a gun on the ground. She looks down and Jesse notices. Just at this moment, Lev comes through the door, which startles Jesse. Abby pushes Ellie forward as she drops to the ground, grabs the gun, and takes a shot. She's able to shoot Jesse in the head just as he pulls his trigger, which hits the glass behind Abby and breaks, flooding the room. Ellie is washed out into the next room where Tommy comes running. He grabs Ellie, who tells him that Jesse is dead. Tommy rushes into the next room to find Abby, but moments later he comes out and tells Ellie she's gone and they have to get moving. Back at the theater, Ellie is staring at her bloodied hands, while Tommy and Dina argue in the background. Dina finally notices Ellie and brings her upstairs to where they have been sleeping. They don't talk as Dina tends to Ellie. After a few moments, Ellie tells Dina she wants to go home. The next day, Dina and Ellie pack up to leave, and Tommy sees them off. Tommy stays in Seattle. A year later, Ellie wakes up to a nightmare. Ellie explains to Dina the nightmares are getting worse and are always about Abby getting away and Joel hiding something from her. Later that day, Ellie has a PTSD attack in the barn. The whole day would be designed to show just how broken Ellie is from what she did in Seattle. Tommy comes to visit while Dina and Ellie are having dinner. Tommy has a limp and a cane to help him stand. We find out he got in over his head shortly after they left Seattle, and he was badly injured and barely made it home. Tommy has found new information on Abby from a new member of the community who came from California. He asks Ellie for her help. They argue and eventually Dina kicks him out. Tommy gets pissed and blames Ellie for Joel's death. Ellie gets up and goes after Tommy, but Dina stops her. She tells Dina Tommy won't stop and she doesn't want their last conversation to be a bad one, similar to what happened with Joel. Ellie catches up to Tommy and tells him not to do anything stupid. Tommy says he can't promise that and that he owes Joel just as much as Ellie does. He explains to her that he abandoned Joel for the Fireflies, and years later when he needed help from Joel, Joel came through, but when Joel asked him for help, he wasn't able to. They didn't speak for years after that, not until Ellie came along. Tommy walks away, telling her that they are equally responsible for his death. Flashback to 2 years ago. Shortly after Ellie met Abby for the first time, Ellie sneaks out of Jackson and makes her way to Salt Lake City to the Firefly Hospital. She is surprised the Fireflies are all dead due to infected. That is until she bumps into one of the skeletons and bullets fall out, realizing that they had been killed by a person and not infected. Eventually, she finds Marlene's dead body with a tape recorder next to it. Marlene recorded her last words of what Joel did and encourages Fireflies to keep moving forward and fight for a brighter future. She explains there are more immune out there that can help their cause. The recording is suddenly cut short by another person recording over it. We hear fighting, and a young Firefly tells anyone who finds the recording that the Fireflies are over and all hope is lost. Ellie leaves and Joel finds her. They argue over Joel's lie and what he's done and how he has stolen Ellie's life. Joel defends himself by telling her there were other immune who died for nothing. Ellie argues that that's not the point. It was her choice, and he stole that from her. Back in the present, later that night, Ellie goes to sneak out, but is caught by Dina. She explains that Tommy is right. She owes Joel everything, and this is more than worth it. Not only that, but she needs to know the truth behind what Abby said, as it's what's haunting her. Dina tells her to do what she wants, but to not expect to come back like nothing happened. A week later, Ellie arrives in California and picks up a trail to the local gang Tommy said had captured Abby. She gets to the hideout and breaks out prisoners who tell her where Abby is. Ellie makes her way to the beach to find Abby nearly dead, strung up on a post. Ellie cuts her down and gets ready to fight Abby, but Abby goes to save Lev. Ellie pushes her away and begins beating the shit out of her, but Abby won't fight back. Ellie threatens Lev, which enrages Abby, and the two begin to fight. They fight until they are worn out. Ellie begins to drown Abby when she sees Joel and remembers his last words to her. The night Joel and Ellie argued at dinner, Joel came to Ellie's home and tried to talk to her, but she didn't answer the door. Joel spoke through the door and told her, "You can't change the past and the mistakes you've made, but you can work to make them right. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes time you just don't have. Life can be cruel that way." Ellie pulls Abby from the water and leans her against a boat. She sits next to her and simply asks, "Why?" Abby, out of breath, tells her in 3 simple words, "He was bit." Ellie looks at Abby, not sure if she's telling the truth. Abby stares back with no reason to lie. After a few moments, Abby tells her she won't lie. She did originally want revenge on Joel, but then he saved her life, which changed everything for her. Flashback to the resort explosion. The player now plays as Abby. We see Joel save her, and she brings Joel to her friends. Here we see Abby break Joel's leg with a baseball bat. Joel doesn't understand, so Abby explains she is the daughter of the doctor he killed. After a short back and forth and a few baseball bat swings, Joel tells her nothing matters anymore because he was bit saving her. Abby is enraged at first, saying he doesn't get to take that away from her. Joel and Abby have an honest conversation about the Fireflies and what they did. Joel admits he's not a good man and the Fireflies aren't all bad, but tells Abby that her father killed many immune in search for a cure and never found one. He wasn't about to let Ellie share that same fate. Joel says Marlene got her father killed by pushing him to do something he wasn't trained to do or could do. He explains her father was a nurse before the world fell, not even a doctor. Even at that, you would need a scientist to create a cure. Joel's words ring true in Abby's ears. Joel says he was sorry he had to kill her father to save his daughter, but if he had to do it again, he would still do the same thing. He asks Abby what she would do in order to save someone she loved. Joel then tells her to kill him, not out of revenge, because it's not what her father would want, but to stop him from taking more life as an infected. Abby holds up the gun to his head and pulls the trigger. Abby and her friends don't kill Ellie due to Abby's change of heart and the fact that Ellie had nothing to do with it in the first place. A few days later, they are back in Seattle and being yelled at by Isaac. He punishes them for the adventure that they went on and puts them all in different areas. Abby gets the worst by being put on the front lines against the Scars. A few days later, Abby gets woken up by a fellow soldier to get ready for an attack. They hint at Abby's friends hating her for what happened. Here we see Ellie cause the battle with the Scars and the infected, but Abby doesn't know it was Ellie. Abby is nearly killed by an infected when a Scar girl saves her. They end up trapped and have to work together to escape. This lets Abby get to know Yara and a little bit more about the Scars. They eventually escape and have to run from the affected, and Yara is injured. Lev comes in and at first thinks it was Abby who injured her. Yara is able to explain, and Lev and Abby are able to get Yara to safety. They go to sleep as it's too dark to make a run for the hospital. The next day, Abby goes to the hospital to get aid for Yara. At the hospital, she finds out her friends are turning up dead around the city and that Isaac is looking for her since she hasn't returned to her post. She asks where Mel is as she needs her help and finds out Mel and Owen have gone AWOL. Abby returns to Yara and gives her painkillers, and they make their way to the Aquatic Museum to find Owen and Mel hiding out. Lots of arguing here. In the end, Abby is able to convince Mel to help. While Mel is working on Yara, Abby and Owen talk about rumors of fireflies out in California. Mel comes in and explains that they need some tools as they have to remove Yara's arm. Abby gets to know Lev on the way to the hospital. Abby finds out Lev and Yara are trying to find a way out of the scars due to them not believing the same things as the rest of them. Abby finds the hospital overrun by infected. They are able to get tools they need and they are able to escape. Once back, Owen tells Abby she may be in the clear as he's gotten word over the radio that they think Abby is dead and are busy planning a final assault on Scar Island. After Yara is stitched up, they get some sleep. The next day, Lev has left. Yara and Abby go to find him, but are caught by Tommy sniping them. Abby and Yara are able to avoid his shots and get close to him. They end up in a fight with him, and they fall over the pier into the water. Abby has to save Yara from drowning as they wash up down the beach from Tommy, Ellie, and Jesse. They are able to start a boat and head to the island. On the island, they are able to find Lev, who has murdered his mother in self-defense. Yara and Abby are able to snap him out of it and start their escape. The WLF assault begins, and they are caught in the middle of it. Yara is separated and killed by Isaac. Lev wants revenge, but Abby is able to talk him down and explain what revenge did to her and how it's not worth it. Abby convinces Lev she is his new family, and they will go back to Owen and Mel, and they will find the fireflies and start a new life. Back at the museum, they find Mel and Owen dead. Abby rushes around the museum to see if they are still nearby and sees Ellie standing outside the doors. Back in the present, Abby explains she is done with the violence. She wants to help Lev find a better life. She wants to get him to the Fireflies and join them in building a future without violence in it. And she will still be there to make sure the Fireflies don't commit the same sins they did in the past. She tells Ellie she'll give her life for Lev if it comes to it. And Ellie thinks of Joel and all he did, risking his life for her. Ellie gets up and walks away, returning home. Weeks later, Ellie finds her home empty. She reflects on the fact that she has managed to lose everything in her life, and it was only because of Joel that she was ever even able to have such a life. Ellie finds her notebook and opens it to the last thing she wrote, which was a letter to Joel, expressing how important he is to her, but how hurt she is from what he did. It goes on to explain that she hopes she can move past it, and that they can be happy together, and she can find it in herself to forgive him. A letter she never got to show him. We end with Ellie walking off towards the mountains with Joel's guitar on her back. The overall goal with this revenge story would be to tell a tale that shows the cost of revenge while also showing people that perspective matters. I like to think of that picture of Prince William where from the side it looks like he's giving the crowd the finger, but from the front he's just saying the number 3 with his hands. As much as Abby is hated by the fan base, and I don't blame them, I would have written her character in a way that shows she is just as young and brash as Ellie, but still can manage to make the right choice. I'd also want the player to hate her for a large portion of the game. I'd keep the ending scene with Ellie and Abby's fight a secret from my team and anyone else involved that I could, and really test it out on them. I'd run as many private screenings as I could on people, basically experimenting with them to see how the twist lands, and tweak it to make sure that it hits just right when it's delivered to the actual player. What I'd be going for isn't a complete heel turn, but a shock factor that makes the player rethink all the choices up until this point. I'd want you to still feel hate for Abby at this point, and slowly through telling her story, you come to understand her and come to neither hate her nor like her. More neutral. It would be the best a writer could hope for when crafting a character you know the fans will hate from the onset. There is no way to win fans over with a character like hers. At least not all fans. Beyond that, I would really flesh out how Abby and Ellie mirror each other. Abby starts out with everything, family, friends, safety, etc. All that gets taken away from her, and by the time she rebuilds it, information comes her way which tears it all apart again. One thing I didn't heavily mention here is the fact that all of her friends, after Joel's death all break up. They don't talk to each other. So once again, she has lost everything and hates what she has done and what it cost her. On the flip side, you may have noticed that I rushed through her section of the story because I don't find it as important as Ellie's. At the end of the day, she is the catalyst for Ellie's story, and this is Ellie's story. I would even consider removing her gameplay entirely in favor of cutscenes explaining some things. Another thing to note is that in this rough draft, I would have to go back and really flesh out Abby's sections to line up with Ellie and show the player that Ellie's actions get Abby nearly killed throughout every single one of her sections. My version of part 2 is far from perfect, but that's just the nature of a rough draft. I'm giving you an overall plot here and how the story would generally go. So at the end of the day, any plot holes or any problems or any lack of character development that you may see in this rough draft would definitely be far more fleshed out. One of the biggest changes I would make would be to Dina and Ellie's relationship, and that would be the fact that they would have been together far longer than what the original story tells. No one kisses someone once and decides they are so in love with them that they would be willing to go on a suicide quest to help them seek revenge. If anything, it would completely turn you off to that person. But if you did have this love at first sight kind of thing, you would more than likely try and talk them out of seeking revenge. So I would have them together for at least a year, at the very least, in order to show Dina's commitment to Ellie and really understand her character and why she would want to seek revenge. For Lev and Yara, at most, I would flesh out the fact that when they are adventuring with Abby, they get a taste of a different life away from their cult-like culture, and seeing the use of technology to survive and aid the world rather than shun it, this would be their final push to realize they truly don't belong with the Scars. It's an eye-opening experience for them to show another world that isn't just blindly brainwashing them to kill for them. Ellie's journey would remain much the same in that the cost of revenge is everything. I'd flesh out the fact that killing in cold blood and torturing people in the name of revenge is much different than defending oneself. I'd have this not only harden her, but leave her with nothing. She is back to square one by the end of the game. And that's my take on the story we got. Stay tuned for version 2, which will be vastly different. So I hope you enjoy that one a little more. But I will say, as far as the 3 versions, I think version 2 might be a little weaker. But I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys. Little postscript edit here. Fun little twist I thought of that would be something I would definitely play around with, which would be after the credits roll, we get a ending credits scene which opens with Abby and Lev arriving on a boat on some shore. They're quickly overrun by infected and Lev is bit. Abby, of course, freaks out, but Lev tells her it's okay because he can't get infected, and then you'd fade to black. This would just be a fun, ironic twist to the whole situation with Ellie and the choice and the lie and all that kind of stuff. And it'd be interesting to see how it all played out in a future game if there were a part 3, if I decided to do a part 3. But you could also just end on that and never touch on it again, and it'd be perfectly fine. Again, this is something I toy with, not necessarily use.